The old leather diary felt heavy in my hands as I sat cross-legged in Grandma Rose's dusty attic. I never expected to find anything significant while cleaning out her house. Just old photographs, maybe some costume jewelry. Instead, I discovered a secret that would shatter my family's carefully constructed lies. My name is Sophie Martinez, and I was always the family disappointment. The one who chose to become a history professor instead of joining the respectable family investment firm. While my cousins drove luxury cars and vacationed in the Maldives, I spent my days in university libraries, teaching students about the past. If only I'd known then how relevant history would become. It started 3 weeks ago when Grandma Rose passed away. She was the family matriarch, though in her final years she lived modestly in an old Victorian house on the outskirts of Boston. My Uncle James, who ran the family firm, immediately started talking about selling the property. It's prime real estate, he declared at the funeral, barely waiting until the service was over. We could get millions for it once it's cleared out. That was my uncle, always thinking about money. He'd taken over the Martinez investment group after my grandfather died 20 years ago, transforming it from a modest firm into a powerhouse. At least that's what he claimed. "Sophie," he said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness, "since you're between semesters, why don't you handle clearing out the house? We'll pay you, of course." The other family members nodded in agreement. Of course they'd delegate the dirty work to me. I was the poor one, after all, the one who supposedly couldn't handle the complexities of high finance. Fine, I agreed. I'll start tomorrow. The first few days were exactly what I expected, sorting through old clothes, cataloging furniture, boxing up kitchenware. Then I found the attic key, hidden inside an old copy of Pride and Prejudice in Grandma's library. The attic was a time capsule, trunks full of vintage clothes, boxes of old letters, and in the corner, a small wooden chest with a simple brass lock. The key from the book fit perfectly. Inside, nestled among old photographs and yellowed papers, was the diary. The leather was cracked with age, but the pages were intact. On the front, in faded gold letters, was my grandmother's name, Rose Elena Martinez. I almost set it aside. It felt wrong to read someone's private thoughts. But then a loose paper slipped out. It was a newspaper clipping from 1983, with the headline, "Local Mining Company Strikes Gold. Martinez Corp sells for record sum." That was odd. I'd never heard of Martinez Corp. Or any mining company in our family's history. According to Uncle James, the family's wealth came from smart investments he'd made in the 90s. I opened the diary to the first page. The entry was dated June 15, 1983. They found it. After all these years, all Thomas's hard work, they finally found the gold. The assayers say the mine is worth at least $89 million. James is furious that his father left controlling interest to me, but Thomas knew what he was doing. James can't be trusted with this kind of money. My hands started shaking. Thomas was my grandfather, James's father. But according to family history, he died nearly broke, leaving Uncle James to rebuild the family fortune. I kept reading. July 3, 1983. The sale is complete. I've hidden the money where James will never find it. Thomas was right about him. I caught him trying to forge documents to seize control of the company. He doesn't know about the second set of books or the real bank accounts. The money is safe now, protected in trusts that only Thomas's true heir can access. True heir. I flipped through more pages, my heart pounding. August 15, 1983. James is telling everyone his father died in debt, that he's the family's savior. If only they knew the truth. The money is growing, hidden in accounts across Europe. I've arranged everything according to Thomas's wishes. When the time is right, his chosen heir will find the truth. The diary went on, detailing an elaborate scheme. My grandfather hadn't died broke. He'd discovered a massive gold deposit in his small mining company, but he didn't trust his son James with the fortune. Instead, he and Grandma Rose had hidden it away, letting James believe he'd inherited nothing. But who was the true heir? I read on, the pieces slowly falling into place. September 1, 1983. Little Sophie turned 1 today. She has Thomas's eyes and his quiet intelligence. James barely acknowledges her, too busy with his schemes and manipulations. He doesn't realize that in her, Thomas's legacy will live on. The trust will remain hidden until she's ready. Me? I was the heir my grandfather had chosen. But I was just a baby when he died. How could he have known? More diary entries revealed the truth. My grandfather had watched James's growing greed and dishonesty with dismay. He'd seen how James manipulated people, how he valued money over everything else. When I was born, something about me had given my grandfather hope. He'd set up the trusts in my name, leaving clues that only someone with my specific interests would find. The diary's final pages contained codes, account numbers, and instructions. All these years, while Uncle James boasted about his financial genius, the real family fortune had been quietly growing in secret accounts. And now, finally, the truth could come out. I stayed in the attic until dawn, reading every page, documenting every detail. The modest house I sat in wasn't just some worthless property to be sold. It was a carefully constructed vault, designed to protect a fortune until the right person discovered it. As I finally closed the diary, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Uncle James. Family reunion this weekend at my house. Mandatory attendance. We need to discuss the sale of your grandmother's property. I looked at the diary in my hands and smiled. Oh, we'd discuss it all right, but first, I had some research to do. The next few days were a blur of activity. I took the diary to my office at the university, using my historical research skills to verify every detail. The newspaper archives confirmed the gold mine's discovery and sale. Old property records backed up Grandma's account of the hidden wealth. Working late into the night, I followed my grandmother's instructions, contacting banks in Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the Cayman Islands. With the codes from the diary, I was able to confirm the account's existence. The total amount made me dizzy. $89 million in 1983 had grown to over $400 million today. But the most damning evidence came from another source. Hidden in the attic chest were documents proving that Uncle James had tried to seize control of the mining company through forged papers. My grandfather had caught him, and that's what prompted the elaborate scheme to hide the money. Each revelation made me angrier. All these years, James had played the role of the family's financial savior, looking down on anyone who didn't worship money like he did. He treated me like a failure because I chose education over wealth. Meanwhile, he tried to steal his own father's company. The family reunion was set for Saturday at James's mansion, a sprawling estate he claimed to have bought with his investment genius. As I prepared the documents I take with me, I thought about all the times he humiliated me at family gatherings. Poor Sophie, he'd say, shaking his head. If only you had your father's business sense instead of wasting time with books and history. My father had died when I was young, another source of James's supposed generosity. I stepped in to help my brother's family, he'd remind everyone, even if his daughter refuses to learn the business. Now, sitting in my small university office surrounded by proof of his lies, I understood why my grandfather had chosen me. It wasn't despite my love of history and research, it was because of it. He'd known that someday someone would need to uncover the truth. Who better than a historian who knew how to dig through the past? I packed the diary and documents carefully in my briefcase. The reunion was tomorrow, and I had one more stop to make. The banks had confirmed my identity and authority over the accounts. All I needed now was to decide how to reveal the truth. As I drove home that night, I thought about my grandmother's final years. She lived modestly, letting James believe he was the family's wealthy protector. She'd waited patiently for the right moment for the true heir to discover the diary. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered to her memory, but I knew why. This was a test, not of greed, but of character. James had failed that test 40 years ago. Now it was my turn to prove I could handle the truth. The morning of the family reunion, I arrived early at Uncle James's mansion. The house was exactly what you'd expect from someone desperate to flaunt their wealth: marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and gold-plated everything. If only they knew it was all built on lies. My cousins were already there, clustered in groups around the grand living room. They barely noticed me walk in, too busy comparing vacation homes and investment portfolios. Uncle James stood by the fireplace, holding court like the king he thought he was. "Ah, Sophie," he called out, his voice carrying across the room. "I trust you finished clearing out that old house. We have developers very interested in the property." I smiled, patting my briefcase. "Actually, Uncle James, I found some fascinating documents we should discuss." He waved dismissively. Later. First, I have an announcement to make." More family members filtered in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them believing James's carefully constructed fantasy of financial brilliance. They settled into expensive leather chairs and sofas, champagne flutes in hand. James cleared his throat. As you know, we're here to discuss the sale of my mother's property. But first, I want to address some rumors. There's been talk about our firm's recent difficulties. My ears perked up. This was new. The market has been challenging, he continued, but I assure you, everything is under control. We simply need to liquidate some non-performing assets, like my mother's house, and reinvest strategically. Translation: he was in trouble. The great financial wizard had finally made one too many bad bets. Now, he turned to me, Sophie, about those developers. Actually, I stood up, moving to the center of the room. I think now is the perfect time to discuss what I found. James frowned. This isn't the moment. Oh, but it is. I opened my briefcase and pulled out Grandma Rose's diary. You see, I found something very interesting in the attic. A diary, grandmother's diary. The color drained from James's face. That's private property. Like the mining company you tried to steal from your father. The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. What mining company? My cousin Peter asked. I held up the diary. Martinez Corp., the company my grandfather owned. The one that discovered a massive gold deposit in 1983. The one worth $89 million back then. James forced a laugh. That's ancient history. The company was worthless. No, Uncle James. That's just what you wanted everyone to believe. After you tried to forge documents to seize control, grandfather and grandmother hid the money. They knew you couldn't be trusted. I pulled out the old newspaper clippings, passing them around the room. The gold mine was real. The sale was real. But the money never went where you thought it did. James stepped forward, his face turning red. These are lies. I built this family's fortune. With what? I challenged. Let's talk about the real numbers, Uncle James. Your investment firm is failing. That's why you're so desperate to sell grandmother's house. You need cash. Fast. Murmurs spread through the room. James's children shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I have proof. I continued pulling out more documents. Bank statements, trust documents, even your original forged papers from 1983. Grandfather kept everything. James lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Careful, Uncle. These have all been verified by 3 separate law firms. And the banks? They're very interested in speaking with the rightful heir. Rightful heir? My Aunt Elizabeth asked. I nodded. Grandfather didn't die broke. He and grandmother hid the money in secret accounts. Today it's worth over $400 million. And he left it all to me. The room erupted in chaos. James staggered backward, clutching his chest. His son Michael rushed to help him to a chair. It's not possible, James wheezed. I looked everywhere. You looked for money, I said. But grandfather hid something more valuable. Truth. He knew someone would need to be curious enough to dig through history, patient enough to piece together the past. He chose me before I could even walk. I opened the diary to its final entry, reading aloud. James values only money. He sees wealth as power, not responsibility. But Sophie, in her eyes, I see a different kind of richness. The wealth of wisdom, of understanding. She will know what to do when she finds this. James slumped in his chair, decades of lies crumbling around him. My cousins stared at their expensive watches and designer clothes, suddenly questioning everything they thought they knew about their family's wealth. The accounts have been verified, I announced. The money is real, and it's legally mine. But unlike you, Uncle James, I understand what real wealth means. I pulled out one final document, a proposal I'd stayed up all night preparing. I'm establishing the Thomas and Rose Martinez Foundation for Educational Excellence. Half the money will fund scholarships for underprivileged students. The other half will be distributed among family members who pledge to use it for education, research, or charitable works. The room was silent, processing what this meant. But the house, James croaked. The developers. Grandmother's house stays exactly as it is. It's not just property, it's history. Our history. I'm turning it into the foundation's headquarters. My cousin Lisa, James's youngest daughter, stood up. I always wanted to be a teacher, she said quietly. But Dad said it was a waste. I smiled at her. Then you'll be the first scholarship recipient. One by one, family members began approaching me, not with demands or entitlement, but with questions, ideas, dreams they'd suppressed under James's materialistic reign. Peter wanted to research sustainable energy. Elizabeth's daughter dreamed of opening a community arts center. Even Michael, James's son, confessed his secret passion for environmental science. James watched in silence as his carefully constructed world of financial dominance crumbled. The mansion suddenly felt hollow, its gold-plated fixtures garish rather than impressive. "You're destroying everything I built," he finally said. "No, Uncle James. I'm building something new. Something real." That evening, as the family dispersed, I visited grandmother's house. My house now. In the attic where it all began, I opened a diary one last time. "Dear Sophie," the final page read, "If you're reading this, you've proven what Thomas always knew. True wealth isn't in bank accounts or stock portfolios. It's in the power to make a difference. Use it wisely." I closed the diary smiling. Outside, the sun was setting over Boston, casting long shadows through the Victorian windows. In my briefcase were the first draft of scholarship applications, proposals for educational programs, and plans for transforming the old house into something meaningful. Grandfather and grandmother had hidden more than money in this house. They hid in hope that someone would understand that wealth wasn't just about having money, but about using it to create positive change. James might have lost his mansion and his illusion of financial genius, but the family had gained something far more valuable: purpose. The Martinez name would now be associated not with greed and deception, but with education, opportunity, and growth. As I walked through the quiet house, I could almost hear Grandmother Rose's gentle laughter. She and grandfather had played the long game, waiting patiently for the right moment, the right person, to reveal their true legacy. The $89 million secret wasn't just about money. It was about trust, wisdom, and the courage to value something more than wealth. In the end, the greatest inheritance they left wasn't in Swiss bank accounts or hidden trusts. It was the chance to transform a family's definition of success. Tomorrow the real work would begin. There were programs to establish, scholarships to create, lives to change. But tonight, in the quiet of the old Victorian house, I simply sat with a diary, grateful for two people who saw beyond money to envision a different kind of future. A future that started with a diary in an attic and ended with a family discovering that their greatest wealth had nothing to do with dollars and cents at all.